First, Harry Maguire scored in stoppage time to salvage a 3-3 draw for Manchester United on a dramatic night in Porto, which saw Bruno Fernandes sent off for the second match in a row. Well, United at one point were cruising. They were 2-0 up after goals from Marcus Rashford and Rasmus Højlund inside 20 minutes, but Pepe and Samuel Omorodion drew Porto level before half-time. Omorodion then scored again after the break to make it 3-2 to the home side. Things got worse for United when captain Fernandes was shown a second yellow card for a dangerously high tackle. But in the first of 3 minutes of stoppage time, substitute Maguire equalised for United with a header and rescue a valuable point for Erik ten Hag. It's their second in this Europa League phase. Well, Rob Enshaw was watching for us here in the studio. What a roller coaster of a game. And I can imagine what relief for Erik ten Hag after this man between us, Harry Maguire, scored that equaliser. Does it feel like a point gained or does it feel like 2 dropped for United?
It's a weird feeling that both feelings.
It is, isn't it?
It's both feelings because you're 2-0 up first half, cruising, and it looked as if Porto were struggling, shell-shocked. Bang, all of a sudden, I think in 6 minutes, it's 2-2. Manchester United are rocked. And then they're 3-2 down. And then it's a man sent off. It looked over, to be honest with you. I think Porto would feel really devastated because they had 2 one-on-ones in the second half and they could have finished it. And it's ended up 3-3. Harry Maguire with the saviour. So, I mean, well done, Manchester United, first of all, because Porto difficult, good team. You end up with 3-3. And I think a sigh of relief, I think, is the feeling in the dressing room now because they are happy with the point because it was about not losing, first of all. The way the game went, they've ended up not losing.
Yeah, and significant moment for Harry Maguire, given he's not had the best of days, left out of the England squad.
A horrible day. Yeah, horrible day for him. And you could see on his face the disappointment, and he didn't even smile when he scored, which I think you'd be devastated. You left out the England squad, devastated. He comes on and he's now the saviour for Manchester United. So well done for him. Great goal, great header. 3-3. I mean, I'm exhausted.
Yeah. I was exhausted watching you talk about it. But serious point about Erik ten Hag. I mean, you just fear what would have happened if they'd lost this game and his captain sent off for a second match in a row. Where does this leave him now with that huge game at Villa Park on Super Sunday coming up?
It makes the Villa game even bigger because I think most people would have expected a Manchester United loss today. So I think this is a big point, and it's actually a good step forward. It's way better than Tottenham, the Tottenham game, and they weren't outplayed completely. They showed signs of who they are as Manchester United. The weird thing is they could end up with winning at Villa, and now it's 4 points from the last 2 games, and everything is brilliant. But listen, they are capable of doing excellent winning games, but tonight they're capable of conceding goals, and they struggle defensively.
Yeah,
tonight.
They really did. Yeah. Rob, thank you so much for your company this evening. Really appreciate it. Well, talking about actually conceding goals, this is a truly damning statistic for Manchester United. This was the 24th time that they've conceded 3 or more goals in a single game under Erik ten Hag since he took over at Old Trafford in 2022. That is more than any other Premier League time in that period. Incredible stat. This is Manchester United we're talking about. OK. Well, Rangers had won 4 games on the spin without conceding a single goal, welcomed Lyon to Ibrox. Lyon, who's had a very indifferent start to the season in Ligue 1, but ended up losing by 4 goals to 1. A teenager, Malik Fofana, opened the scoring for the French side. Tom Lawrence equalised, but really that was as good as it got for Rangers. Fofana scored again, 2 goals for former Arsenal striker Alexandre Lacazette. Rangers outclassed on the night, having begun this Europa League phase with a 2-0 win at Malmo. Let's speak to Chris Boyd, who's watching this one for us. Chris, were Rangers that bad? Were Lyon that good? What was your assessment?
Yeah, both that. Obviously, Czerny had an opportunity right before Lyon scored right at the start to put Rangers up, but missed it inside the 6-yard box and smashed it over the bar, leaning back. But from that moment on, it was all Lyon. Fofana, as you say there, Cherki and Lacazette absolutely ripped Rangers apart this evening. The front three were outstanding. Struggled to deal with them, the pace, the trickery, the finishing. They had everything. That front line, obviously. Fofana gets the first one, and then Lawrence. Dessers is probably a score that can back off the goalkeeper. Lawrence puts it in the back of the net, and Rangers get back into it. Then at this level, Conor Barron, it was a no-look pass. It gets caught out, and Fofana was onto it. Does really well, gets into the box, and it's a little cut back for Lacazette, who passes it into the back of the net. Then the third goal was a special strike. I would imagine Philip Clement will probably moan about the offside. The referee's in the line of blocking whenever the ball leaves the attacker's foot, and it does look as if he's offside. But take nothing away from the finish. It is an unbelievable strike from Lacazette, giving Butland absolutely no chance. And then Cherki down the right-hand side fired the ball across, and Fofana was coming in at the back post, to smash it in the back of the net for 4. To be honest, David, it was 4. It could have been a lot more for Lyon. They were outstanding tonight. You've got to say, this week, we've got to give, Hearts team from the capital credit. Yeah. The only Scottish team to go and get the victory in Europe. Fantastic performance for them, and Minsk come back with the 3 points. It's hard to believe Rangers have lost 4-1 this evening, and it's not even the worst result for a Scottish team in Europe this week. Unbelievable.
Had to go there. Very
I've still got a laugh.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, listen, very briefly, in terms of Rangers now, what does Philippe Clement take from this game? Are there any learnings when it comes to then plugging that back into the league? Obviously, the ground to make up on Celtic and Aberdeen as they take on St Johnstone at home at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the performance against Malmo last week, there was a lot in terms of the confidence. You thought you were going to come back and everything would be rosy. And the performance against Hibs was, a bit patchy, started okay, and in the second half, Hibs were, gave as good as they got. And then tonight, I mean, Lyon have ran totally over the top of Rangers. I've said it before. I don't think Rangers are really in control of a game of football and control the game at their tempo. It's either really slow or it's hectic. There's no in between. There's, when you're looking for people just to be calm, put your foot in the ball and make passes, it doesn't seem to, to happen. And then you're looking at it, when you do get it and you're giving away. I mean, the turnover of, possession tonight for Rangers was really, really poor, and that's something they're going to have to build on. I mean, I expect them to go and take care of St Johnstone comfortably at the weekend, but it's a couple of weeks now. I think it's Bucharest that come to Ibrox, but I think that it's a big couple of weeks coming up for Rangers. Obviously, St Johnstone, then the international break, and they need to try and get themselves back into the league. But obviously, Europe tonight, it wasn't to be, as I said, absolutely thrashed from Lyon.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Chris.
Thank you, David. Good night.
Now, Brennan Johnson scored for the 5th match in a row as a youthful Tottenham side beat Ferencváros 2-1 in Hungary. Spurs have now won 5 games in a row in all competitions for the first time since March 2021. Ange Postecoglou started 4 teenagers: Mikey Moore, Will Lancashire, Lucas Bergfell and Archie Gray. But it was 2 of Spurs' senior players who scored the goals. Pat Matasar gave them the lead before Johnson came off the bench to score for the 5th straight game, as we mentioned. Barnabas Varga did pull one back late on for the Hungarian champions, but Tottenham held it on to make it 2 wins from 2.
With all these things, you've got to be really careful with the young players. I certainly am. The first thing is that they're part of our first team squad, not because I want some young players. It's because they've earned that spot. And then it's about how to help them develop and, the moments we need to put them in there, the moments we need to hold off. And, we can't discount the fact that, Archie's 18, Lucas is 18. I thought Archie was brilliant today. We asked him to play 2 different positions, and it's incredible how he just, adjusts and is able to bring his game to wherever we put him. Lucas worked hard. Will was unlucky a couple of moments. We could have got a goal. So, these guys are there because they've earned their spot, but, they're an important part of our development because, whilst we want to kind of be a team that has an impact this year, it's, like I said before, it's important we're developing players along the way so that, whatever sort of period of potential for success or opportunity for success exists, it's elongated because of the young players you've got through. And I just think tonight all those boys will come through that and go, okay, that was tough, different, but we got through it and we won.
Now, Chelsea are huge favourites to win the Conference League, and they were comfortable winners over the Belgian side Gent. So they won 4-2 at Stamford Bridge. Renato Vega scoring his first goal for the club 12 minutes in. Pedro Neto made it 2-0 less than a minute into the second half. Gent then pulled one back before Christopher Nkunku and Kieran Dewsbury-Hall pretty much sealed the win, although Gent did score a second late on. There was a big win for Hearts as they left it late to come from behind to beat Dinamo Minsk. It is Hearts' first win of the season at the 11th attempt. They went behind early on. An own goal made it 1-1, though. In the 94th minute, Jan Danda won it with a header. The match played, by the way, inside an empty stadium in Azerbaijan, and this because of Belarus's support for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And Dinamo Minsk, of course, are a Belarusian club. A League of Ireland side, Shamrock Rovers, snatched a fantastic point against Cypriot team Apoel. Shamrock had to play the last 40 minutes with 10 men, but Dylan Watts was the hero. He made it 1-1 with a header in the 92nd minute. Irish Premiership side Lyon were beaten 3-0 by Norwegian side Molde. Lyon, the first Northern Irish team to compete in a UEFA competition proper. They held their own in the game with a score 0-0 at half-time, but then 3 second-half goals for Molde see them run out. Comfortable winners. Lyon also had Conor Kendry sent off in stoppage time. What about Welsh side, the New Saints? Well, they gave a great account of themselves against Fiorentina in their first match in the Conference League against all the odds. Goalless until the 65th minute, but goals from Yassin Adli and Moise Keane won it for. Welcome along to Charlotte and to John. Where do you think we should start then? Well, obviously Manchester United. We're going to come to the Sun. Back from the red is the headline. Obviously, felt like United had really stuffed themselves in this game. 2-0 up, then 3-2 down. Then their captain is sent off again, Bruno Fernandes, for a high-footed challenge. But Harry Maguire, the irony after he sort of dropped by Lee Carter, he isn't in the England squad for the upcoming Nations League games, and he's the man that earns them that point. Charlotte, I just wonder. I mean, obviously, life is never dull if you're a Manchester United fan right now. But when it comes to this game, how significant is Harry Maguire's equaliser in ultimately what happens to Erik ten Hag over the next week, 2 weeks, or even further?
I think if we look at the game as a whole, how it played out, the fact that Manchester United were 2-0 up and capitulated in a way that everyone has seen all too often under Erik ten Hag, I'm not sure that it's going to do much in terms of the grand picture or the grand designs of what Ineos or the board are thinking about this. Manchester United all this week were saying they were not going to panic. Obviously, after the result against Tottenham at the weekend, all the discussion was, is he going to go? Is he going to get sacked? And they were saying, no, he's going to be in charge for the next 2 games. And that's what all we're talking about. We're remaining calm, we're remaining focused. He didn't want to get dragged into this narrative that he had 2 games to save his job. I think the bigger problem with this is not that, obviously, they got the point. It was great for Harry Maguire to come off the bench and score that last-minute header to get them a point, especially when they were down to 10 men. I think the bigger problem that Manchester United have is these consistent and repetitive failings, and whether Erik ten Hag is the right man to resolve them problems going forward. Are they problems of his making? Can he make them better? Have they progressed in the 2.5 years that he's been in charge there? And where are they going under him? And I don't think a last-minute headed equaliser when they were 2-0 up against Porto away from home is necessarily going to affect the whole narrative around Erik ten Hag. Yeah,
I mean, it is, as you say, that the nature of the capitulation and conceding goals, 3 in a game is really not uncommon for Manchester United under Erik ten Hag. John, coming to you, when you think then of this in the context of the Villa game at the weekend, which now has even more importance, I mean, how now acute is the pressure on Erik ten Hag going into that game?
Well, I think it's massive, David, to be honest. I do think it's worth picking up on the point, United's record in Europe under ten Hag. United are a club based on glory, based on history, based on their European success, frankly. That's what we judge them on. That's why they regard themselves as the biggest club in the world. And I have to say history and kind of, sort of their standing, I think, makes them that. But at the moment, under Ten Hag, they're failing miserably in Europe. I think it's 1 win in 10 European games under Ten Hag. I mean, you have to judge that in isolation, in my view, because if United want to be a European force, and they should expect to be, I think. I mean, listen, they should be in the Champions League. They're not, they're in the Europa League. So it's, that's first failing. And so it's just not good enough. I do think with Ten Hag, they made a huge play, didn't they, in the summer, of doing a big review, speaking to other candidates. And at the end of that review, they said, look, we've stuck with Ten Hag. And I think it would be ridiculous, frankly, to then pull the trigger on him after 9 games. I mean, what have we had? Sort of kind of 6 Premier League games, couple of games in Europe, and a Carabao Cup game. And frankly, I just think if you go to that sort of length of detail and ready to kind of stick by your manager, back him in the transfer market, which they did to a great extent, I think, making a decision in the international break in October would be just rash and out of keeping with United's tradition of backing managers. But it has to be said, you have to turn this around very quickly. And United fans, I think, have been really patient and understanding and sort of kind of full of support for Ten Hag. Yes, he's delivered a couple of trophies, but they expect a lot more. But that patience is wearing thin. And I do think nights like tonight, I mean, it was just their capitulation from 2-0 up to them being saved by a man that Eric Ten Hag frankly wanted to discard and was ready to discard in Harry Maguire. What does that say about his personality and his character? I think he's a wonderful leader and example for Manchester United. I really do. It's sometimes taken for granted, but he's still in there fighting. And United need a lot more of him and performances like that if they're to succeed and turn this round for the manager at Aston Villa. And I do think it's become a crunch game at Villa Park on Sunday because the eyes and the pressure is really on. I do think Ten Hag and his future right now. Yeah, and obviously with the international break that follows, it's often the time that clubs make a change. And who knows if Manchester United lose at Unai Emery's team at the weekend. We've just heard from Eric Ten Hag in the post-match news conference, Charlotte, and he said that he decided to take Marcus Rashford off at half-time, despite the fact he scored the opener in this game after 7 minutes, for rotational reasons. Does this sound like a man who sort of is really in control of the dressing room, knows what he's doing? If there's someone who's under scrutiny as much as him, it's his captain, and then it's also Marcus Rashford. These are all huge protagonists in this story, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it doesn't sound like a man who was watching the first half. I think we could all argue that Marcus Rashford was probably Manchester United's most dangerous player, and every time he was on the ball, he looked dangerous running into the box. Obviously, he scored that goal, didn't he? And as soon as he went off, the question was being asked to officials at Manchester United at half-time, surely Marcus Rashford is injured, why would you bring him off? The reply that we got back suggested that he wasn't, and obviously Eric Ten Hag has now come out and said rotational reasons. I think when you're then chasing a game and you've gone 3-2 down and you've taken off your biggest attacking threat, then questions do have to be asked to the manager as to what sort of decision that was. I think the assumption from everyone was that surely he had to be injured, because why on earth would you bring him off? I think you mentioned there about Bruno Fernandes. I think we've seen in the last couple of games that when things have got and he needs to stand up and be counted for, he's lost his head. And I know it was unfortunate that he was sent off against Tottenham. He didn't deserve that, but we've seen again, I think it was 242 games he hadn't been sent off for Manchester United. He's been sent off 2 games in a row. And this is the time when Manchester United need their leaders. John mentioned there, Harry Maguire, stripped of the captaincy, relegated to 5th choice centre-back, comes on, stands up, scores the decisive goal that gets Manchester United a point. Bruno Fernandes, the captain, the leader, already in the dressing room because he's been sent off 2 games in a row. So I think there's a lot of personalities that need managing in that team, but I do think that Eric Ten Hag got it really wrong with bringing Marcus Rashford off at half-time.
And just talking about Bruno Fernandes there, I mean, you mentioned, Charlotte, the 2 in 2 games having not been for such a long time. Does it feel like, when you have a senior figure like that, John, it just feels like this thing just is feeding itself, this chaos, and you have the club captain who, in Premier League football, is getting sent off, and now in Europa League as well. Does that give you signs that the wheels are coming off?
Certainly gives me signs that Fernandes is getting frustrated. Listen, I thought that Sunday's red card, which obviously has been subsequently overturned, was ridiculously harsh, and I thought it was a poor state of affairs that you know the referee gave it in the first place, and then VAR didn't step in and save him. I think that says a lot about our sort of kind of refereeing standards at the moment. But having said that, surely it makes the captain think, actually, I need to have a look at myself and basically review that. And the second yellow tonight, you know, sort of kind of the sending off again, why has he gone in so high? You know, you could argue, and people already have been, that basically it's a bit harsh again, but, you know, because he doesn't actually kind of really catch him in the head. But actually, why is he not going in with his head, knowing already that he's on a yellow card, so he's on a tightrope? It just makes no sense. You know, that is, I think, the kind of the play of a hot-headed player, a player who's lost his discipline, who's lost his temper, and that's the last thing you expect from a captain and a leader. Fernandes, you know, has had his captaincy and why he is captain questioned so many times. But I do think when a manager is under pressure, he expects strong leadership from his captain, from his leader on the pitch. And I just don't think he's getting that, you know, from Bruno Fernandes. I actually think that Fernandes, if you dig deeper, is systematic frankly, of some of United's problems, because he's a good player, but frankly, you know, he can be really impressive and dangerous and creative for Manchester United. But as a leader, no chance. There's far too many players, I think, that are sort of kind of disappearing, taking the easy way out, not standing up, being strong enough. And I'm afraid to say that Fernandes epitomises that in my view. I mean, how can you throw away a 2-0 lead, go behind 3-2, Harry Maguire rescues it 3-3, absolutely chaotic. And that is when you need proper leaders, proper captains to stand up. And United simply did not have enough of them tonight. It was absolute chaos at the back. The standard of defending was absolutely shambolic. And I have to say, Ten Hag again has to, you know, look at himself in the mirror and say, what am I doing wrong? You know, am I closing enough, getting the players to close enough spaces, getting them to defend properly? It's just not good enough. And De Ligt, who in my opinion can be a really good player, is just not playing anywhere near his potential at the moment. And some of this responsibility cannot just be on the players. It has to be on the manager for not coaching them, not drilling them, not getting them prepared enough for before games.
I mean, listen, the lens on Erik ten Hag is so tight right now. You know, we're analysing everything about how he's talking, what he's saying, and, you know, we've got this huge game against Aston Villa at the weekend. Charlotte, how do you think, first of all, is there anything positive you can take from tonight's experience? But also, secondly, how do you think his discourse might sort of change? Because he's talking to the media, but he's also talking to the fans. Is there going to be any more contrition? Is there going to be any sort of raw honour? Any more contrition? Going to be, I'm not worried, I'm here to win trophies, that's what I do.
I think he's got to come out and say that. I don't think he can come out and say that he is worried about the state of the team. I think he's got to come out and talk maybe about the positives, but he needs to reflect on the negatives, of which there has been a lot from Manchester United, and not just tonight. Obviously, they were so open, but the game against Tottenham, the game against 20 last week, they're conceding the same sort of goals. They're letting players run through their midfield. Their defence is lacking. At least tonight they managed to, the positives, if you want to take them, they scored with their first 2 shots on target, which they haven't been able to do. We've been talking about Manchester United not taking those chances. So tonight they did manage to do that in the first half with Rashford and Højlund starting back from injury. Another positive for them. But defensively, and those problems in midfield, they keep on reoccurring, and they're coming up against a really dominant Aston Villa side on Sunday. They should be worried. So Erik ten Hag is going to have to come out and explain what he is going to change. He needs to talk about the negatives, but I expect him to cling on to the little positives that there were today, because what else is he supposed to talk about?
Yeah, and John, to the players, I mean, you know, to be a fly on the wall inside that Manchester United dressing room in Porto tonight, what do you think the message will be, and how does he deal with this so very complicated and, as you say, chaotic situation? You know, having to rely on a man he wanted to discard to rescue them tonight, having Bruno Fernandes sent off, you know, hooking Marcus Rashford at half-time. Now, how does he handle this for Villa Park? Of course, you know, Aston Villa, I'm sure they'll be licking their lips for the visit of Manchester United, having just beaten Bayern Munich in the Champions League.
Yeah, well, Villa will be fired up, won't they? Actually, I was reminded that United do have a decent record at Villa Park, so you never know. Sometimes out of adversity comes a surprise. But frankly, also, you have to take into account Villa are at home, have an extra day's rest. United a long trip back from Porto, and it's going to be a really difficult one. Look, the very least he can expect really is a kind of some sort of cohesion, trying to kind of keep them together, trying to keep them really as a unit. That's what he has to expect, really. He has to kind of galvanise those players. I don't always think he gets his message across at all well. I still think he's kind of, as Charlotte was alluding to, sometimes he doesn't express himself particularly well, I don't think. And sometimes that, I don't know whether that kind of, is to appease fans and gets fans on side, and also maybe in the process sends mixed messages to players. So, I mean, they've got to now back their manager. They've got to stand tall, because I tell you what, a bad defeat on Sunday ahead of an international break is seriously bad news for Ten Hag. So the pressure's really on him.
Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag explains why Marcus Rashford was substituted against Porto. In a surprising move, Marcus Rashford was taken off by Erik ten Hag at halftime, despite scoring one goal and assisting another in Manchester United's clash against Porto. Ten Hag acknowledged that Rashford's defensive performance had been an issue during a chaotic first half before his substitution. Rashford gave United an early 1-0 lead in the 7th minute and then set up Rasmus Højlund for their second goal in the 20th minute. However, Porto fought back, scoring twice in 7 minutes to level the game by halftime. Alejandro Garnacho came on at the break, replacing Rashford, who had not completed 90 minutes in any of his previous 5 United appearances. Ten Hag explained that Rashford's substitution was part of a rotation strategy. In the post-match press conference, Ten Hag stressed the importance of getting Garnacho involved, as the young winger wasn't deemed fit to start. Garnacho was by far my best player on Sunday, and in many other games as well, Ten Hag emphasized. So far this season, he's been providing that offensive threat, creating chances, getting assists, and scoring. We needed to bring him in. We have 2 very good players on that side. When asked if Rashford's defensive struggles, particularly failing to track João Mario, who crossed for Porto's first goal, contributed to his substitution, Ten Hag responded, "I have to stay aware, and on the left side, we definitely didn't defend well tonight, and Marcus played a role in that. But as I said, it was about getting Garnacho on the pitch, not about anything against Rashi." A 91st-minute header from Harry Maguire saved United from their 4th defeat of the season, but the team remains winless in their last 4 games and has only 1 victory in their last 10 European matches. Despite scoring 12 goals in their last 4 European away games, United have failed to win any, suffering losses to Bayern Munich and Copenhagen and drawing with Galatasaray last year. Ten Hag also expressed frustration with his team's lack of defensive commitment, particularly on Samu Omarodian's 50th-minute goal, which put Porto ahead 3-2. "I have mixed feelings," Ten Hag added. "We all know this is a tough place to come. When you start that well, the players executed the plan brilliantly, and we scored 2 great goals. Then we switched off. We didn't control possession as we did earlier, and defensively, we switched off, conceding a completely unnecessary first goal. In a stadium like this, that lights the fire. It became really tough after that. We addressed things at halftime, but then we conceded a 3rd goal unnecessarily, no one defended, and it came down to a lack of willingness in those moments. But I have to credit the team for how they fought back and found a way to equalize.